Hello, everyone. Thank you so very much for coming. My name is Meyerhoff. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Woodstock Film Festival. And I love being here in this beautiful space, the Kleinert James Gallery, where we hold our panels. And each year we have some really, really fantastic panels. I'm so proud of them. We assemble some of the best directors, actors, producers, musicians, and they talk about issues in their field, and it's always so educational, and it's inspiring, and it's also entertaining. And what else can you ask in life? I think it's a great combination. This is our 16th year of doing it. We started back in 2000, and can't imagine. I mean, I just can't. Sometimes I cannot. I'm sort of shocked that we have been doing it for that long. But I know that one of the main reasons that we have been able to do it for that long is thanks to our sponsors. And I just want to thank our founding and presenting sponsor, Marketech, without whom we couldn't possibly be here. They're wonderful. So thank you, Marketech. And I also want to thank Toyota and 120dB Films. These are our gold sponsors, and thank you guys so very much. I also want to thank some other founding sponsors, such as BMI. For those of you who came to the panel just before it, the music and film, that was their panel. It was incredible. And companies such as WDST, thank you. They've been with us since the beginning as well. And also NYWIFT, New York Women in Film and Television. I have begun to work with them. Not quite in 2000, but I'm pretty sure it was very soon after. They have been coming here off and on for many, many years, and it's always such an incredible pleasure. There aren't too many other organizations out there that represent and support women filmmakers quite like the way they do. So NYWIFT, thank you so very much. We're very, very thankful for you and for all the work that you do. That's New York Women in Film and Television. Which, by the way, now has an upstate chapter called UpWIFT, and that's Upstate Women in Film and Television. So together with Terry Lawler, the executive director of NYWIFT, we have assembled some of the strongest women in the film industry, and I'm so very proud that they are all here, just about to come and talk to you about a panel that we have titled Enough Already, because we're going to change things, and we're going to change them now. Starting here. So I would like to bring producer Alexis Alexanian, who's going to be the moderator. Last time Alexis was here at the Woodstock Film Festival. Come on up, Alexis. It was when we had a panel about Pieces of April. Pieces of April. That was a long time ago. It was an incredible panel, but that was the last time she was here. Sorry. So I'm very, very happy she's back. She's an incredible producer, and Alexis is going to bring everybody else up. So, Alexis?
Hey, ladies. Everyone will take their seats. Thank you, Mira.
Thank you very much.
Maybe speak right closer into it.
I can bring it in. Okay. Let's get acclimated, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. So, enough already implies what? Exasperation, perhaps frustration, call to action, maybe all of the above. So we're going to explore what's happening in that space, what's happening in that the conversation about women and gender parity in our industry. But first, I'm going to have my esteemed panelists introduce themselves, and for just a second, tell us who you are and what you're doing in the space.
Hi, I'm Rose McGowan, and I am doing
whatever I can in this space as an artist and as a director and as a former actress and rabble-rouser to kind of like shake the belfry and knock the bats out.
Hi, I'm Amy Hobby, and I'm a co-founder of Tangerine Entertainment, and we produce films only directed by women, and we build community and have all sorts of events to help women directors.
Hi, my name is Leah Meyerhoff, and I am a writer-director. My last feature film, I Believe in Unicorns, played at this festival last year, and now just came out on Netflix yesterday. And I'm also, and I'm also the founder of a collective of women directors called Film Fatales, which was started over 2 years ago, which provides a space for women directors to get together and collaborate on projects and mentor each other and really build a community in which we can make our films.
Hi, I'm Rachel Watanabe Batton, and I'm an independent producer, also a NIWIFT member and Film Fatales producers member. I also, in my capacity as Producers Guild of America Vice Chair, do a lot of advocacy work, and so I chair both the Diversity Committee and co-chair PGA Women's Impact Network, and so we'll talk a lot about the initiatives and things we're doing there.
And I know, Mayor, I gave you a lovely intro, but I'm going to say a few more things about myself. I'm wearing a couple of hats today. One is as president of the board of New York Women in Film and Television, which, for those of you who don't know, we have over 2,000 members of women and men in film, television, and digital media. We program over 50 professional development seminars, screenings, and Q&As. We celebrate women's work in the space. We archive the work of industry veterans who happen to be women. We do film preservation. We provide scholarships and grants for women at every stage of their career. In fact, we most recently got a lot of press because the Meryl Streep Foundation gave us a healthy sum of money to have a writer's lab specifically for women over 40, screenwriters over 40, and we had an overwhelming reaction to that. I think we had 3,500 scripts submitted, and we chose 12, and we had the writer's lab last weekend.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So what does that show you, right? That there is an audience out there. There's an audience of filmmakers and aspiring writers and filmmakers, and we are trying. Terry Lawler, who you will see afterwards, who's here somewhere, who has been our executive director for many, many, many years, has been championing women's advocacy in this space for a very long time. And often we're approached by people who have some money, family foundations or grants, and Terry is very good at figuring out where there's a gap and where there's a space that needs to be filled. So, for example, we have a grant from the Ravenel Family Foundation, which is for women directors, also over 40, for their second feature. So we're identifying these spaces, and we're trying to match money and resources with those gaps, and that's what we're doing. The other hat that I'm wearing today is I recently started full-time with a company called Locomotive, which was recently relaunched by Lucy Barzin-Donnelly and Alexander Carey to make movies and television. We have a significant amount of money to develop and produce the projects we want to produce, and I'm president of production, so I'll be talking from a practical standpoint as well. So let's take a minute to delve in a little bit more deeply into what the conversation is about. What are all these headlines? I don't know how aware you are of the numerous studies. I'm just going to read you a couple of headlines that we show on our NIWIFT website so that you can see. There was, most recently in the Wall Street Journal, I don't know if anybody saw that, I think it was 3 days ago, about the decreasing number of women in the C-suite, CEOs, CFOs, COOs, et cetera. And so even though our industry has a portion of it that's corporate and the rest is very, very indie, it's still, I think, an important part of the conversation to take note. But so I'm just going to read you some of these study conducted by the Directors Guild of America, analyzing over 3,900 TV shows in the 2014-2015 season, shows that women directors represented 16% of all episodic directors for broadcast, cable, and internet-based web series. Okay? New USC study finds minimal growth for women characters in feature films. The University of Southern California at Anna Berg's, I sound like a news reporter, don't I? At Anna Berg's University and Social Change Initiative, it's not funny, but it's really fascinating, has published a 7-year analysis of the gender, ethnic, and sexual diversity of characters in feature films from 2007 through 2014. The study also examines people behind the camera, including content creators, such as directors, producers, writers, among others. This study is the most comprehensive analysis of diversity in recent popular films ever conducted, bringing together data assessing gender, race, ethnicity, and LGBT status in the top 100 movies of the year. The study reveals a complete picture of Hollywood's indisputable bias against featuring females, people of color, and LGBT characters on screen. Sundance Institute and Women in Film LA unveil groundbreaking study on women directors. UCLA 2015 Hollywood Diversity Report, Flipping the Script. A recent study by the Ralph J. Bunche Center for African American Studies at UCLA finds that while an increasingly diverse TV, film, and new media audience prefers diverse programming, women and minorities remain underrepresented both in front of and behind the camera. Now I could go on, but I just wanted to give you guys a real sense of what, these are major studies, major money behind this, and lots of articles. So you can feel free to look at the NIWIF website and drop down to see what's happening with women in the space. But I want us to take a minute now and talk a little bit more in depth about the work that each one of our panelists is doing in that space, and ask you sort of why you chose to focus in this way. I'm going to start with Rachel to talk a little bit, just frame for us what's happening at the PGA, what the PGA is for those who don't know, and tell us a little bit about the Women's Impact Network.
Sure. So the PGA is a guild for producers, similar to Directors Guild, Writers Guild, in that, except that we're not a union because apparently we're above the line, so to speak. But we advocate for our members. There are 7,000 members nationwide, and hopefully at some point we'll be more international. But we've been really concentrating on diversity for a long time. I think it's always been a priority for the PGA. And in 2013, now 2 years, Lydia Dean Pilcher and myself and Joyce Pierpoline and Caitlin Burns came together on the East Coast along with our colleagues on the West Coast, namely Deb Kala, who's also involved with diversity there, to talk about some of the ways that we could create some impactful, non-kvetching change in the industry, because all of us have been producing content with women directors, with diverse casts, and themes, quite frankly. And so we founded the Women's Impact Network then, and through a series of galvanizing people from our committees, and we had a great meeting at HBO at our launch, and we've always had support from different networks and just other colleagues in the industry providing space. And so we became part of the Sundance Women Filmmaker Initiative because it's always best to figure out what everybody's doing and really try to collaborate. And so we've been involved with them and doing the finance intensive, and attending and participating as mentors. And then really just last month, in the last couple of weeks, we've been working on, for the past couple years, a toolkit, which really it seemed that after talking to many people, we have lots of talent. There's no lack of female stories, talent, actors, tremendous diversity there. And but it was getting these stories made. And what's the economic argument that you can make? So that in fact, if people aren't willing to do it to do the right thing, let's see if they're willing to help because it's the smart thing to do financially. So the toolkit is the Ms. Factor toolkit that was just launched and available on the Producers Guild website. And it's a very long 30-something page document that really is like the kitchen sink, everything, you know, television, film, stats, and just it debunks the myths that are clearly, you know, just pervasive in the industry, that women's content doesn't make money, which is just a big lie. So we can go into those things later, but that's essentially, it's really trying to give resources that you can put into your business plans that it can help you make the case in a concrete way and say, no, actually these films make hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. So then what's your argument now?
So that's a real testament to the power of just plain old information, right?
Yeah, and there were tremendous stats from USC's Annenberg, Stacy Smith's study, Melissa Silverstein from Women in Hollywood worked on this a lot. So it wasn't just us in a vacuum, you know, it was really reaching out for Nielsen and Google Analytics and, you know, hard stats.
So you'll be able to share some of those highlights with us
Yeah.
later, some fun facts that we might not all be aware of.
Yeah.
Actually, how we do have a corner of the market in some places and can generate big dollars for consumers and for the studios.
Yeah, definitely. Happy to.
Okay. Leah, do you want to tell us a little bit about what's happening with Film Fatales?
Yeah, so I think, thank you for sharing those statistics to give us some context. The idea behind Film Fatales was, rather than getting depressed by these statistics and giving up, it's what can we do in a grassroots social movement to make change. And it comes from the ethos that female directors are often our own best resources to help each other and share knowledge with each other and really mentor each other as we make our films. And it began around 2 years ago as I was making my first feature film and looking for mentorship and looking for other female directors who'd come before me. And I reached out to 6 of them and invited them over to my house and made them dinner and said, I need help. I'm about to make this feature film. I need advice. And at the end of that dinner, it was so empowering, not just for me, but for the other 6 women there, to just be in a space where you're not the only female director in the room, to be surrounded by other female directors, that one of them said, let's do this again next month, I'll host. And it just organically grew and grew. So from 6 women in my living room 2 years ago, we now have over 2,000 women in 24 cities around the world. And it just keeps spreading, kind of like Fight Club, but way cooler. Instead of beating each other up, we're helping each other make our films. So every month, dozens of women get together in each other's living rooms. They sit in a big circle, and they talk about a topic in film. And they share knowledge, and they share resources. They recommend crew. They recommend film festivals. They co-write. They co-direct. They really collaborate in a DIY, grassroots way to get more films made. And I think the solution to this problem takes both that bottom-up approach and a top-down approach. We also need those with power and those with financing to reach outside of their boys club network and take a chance on more first-time directors, second-time directors. You know, it's a self-perpetuating problem when those with financing look to make a film. They tend to go to finance films by people who look like them or by people who've already made several commercially successful films. And if 95% of those people are straight white men, it just becomes a self-perpetuating problem. So the idea is, as female directors, there's strength in numbers and in us raising the visibility for each other.
It's terrific. Yeah. It's really has an impact.
Yeah.
I think it's also, you're also providing a forum, a well-needed forum for women, so that people don't feel like they're sort of out there on their own fighting these fights. When the more you sit around and talk about it and share ideas, even in our writers' lab, two weeks ago, we had the producers, the mentors are all women I've known for 25 years, and I was kind of laughing because there we were, kind of all dressed in black with our little, like, trusty, you know, taking on the world with the producing problems. You know, we got to sit in a natural setting and look at a beautiful, look at Lake George and trees and sort of air out, you know, some of the problems that we have in our everyday, you know, work as independent producers. And so I think the forum aspect of Fatales the numbers. I'm imagining a 70s, I don't know if it was a hair color commercial where there were all these women and so on and so on and so on, you know? And she told someone and so on, and so I'm just imagining all the filmmakers in line behind the femme fatales. I don't know if that's useful for you. Advertising maybe. And Amy, Amy, I've known you for quite a long time. You've been making independent films as long as I've known you. And I know your partner, Anne, and she's also on the board of New York Women in Film and Television with me. So tell us a little bit about how you and Anne came together and why you created Tangerine and why that mandate. And a little bit more about the mandate.
Well, Anne was working on a female political campaign, and she came into our office one day. She was working for something called Eleanor's Legacy that helps women candidates compete. And she came in and said, we should work with more women. And we looked up the statistics, same as everyone. We were like, holy cow, we should brand our company to this. And we thought that branding the company and making a point of only working with women and getting the message out was important. But Anne and I also love an action point. We love action. So instead of spending too much time talking about it, we sit around the office, we think about, okay, what can we do to solve these problems? And one big thing is, as Leah was pointing out, getting women financiers to finance women directors. Like you were saying, financiers often finance those who look like them. So we've been aggressively going out and meeting and taking meetings and taking meetings with women executives and agents and just saying, support women directors, put your money where your mouth is, and do that. And so we've had quite success. We just finished Amber Tamblin's film called Paint It Black, and that was financed by a woman, a single woman, was super proud and came down and was part of the whole process, and it was a good experience from both sides. We're finishing a documentary. We don't do a lot of docs, and that was financed also by a woman, one woman. So we're trying to make those partnerships and say, support your own. The other thing we started doing is giving out grants, and we're giving out one here at the Woodstock Film Festival tonight. So we give out, we have a crowdsourced awards program called the Juice Fund, and people make tax-deductible donations, and we turn around and go to a series of festivals and give out, it's $1,000, but also, recognition, and, there's a press release, and it also includes 5 hours of mentorship. So the directors come in, and they can come in and talk to us if they're concerned about distribution or their next film, or, and the grant's unrestricted. You can use that $1,000 to pay for your festival expenses. It's not a lot, but it's the idea of supporting these first and second time women directors. So we're constantly thinking, what can we do to make changes all the time?
Sounds like you're doing it.
We're trying.
Tell us about the 5 hours of mentorship.
It's actually, some directors don't even make use of it at all, which is fine, saves us time. But some directors come in and I guess, we help with film festivals. That's been very useful. People come in and say, okay, well, I premiered at Woodstock, and now what? I didn't get a distributor. And, it's very, very practical mentorship for the most part. It's like, what other film festivals did you apply to? Who came to your distributor? I'm having a distributor screening. My agent didn't tell me who's coming to it. And we're like, who's your agent? And then we text them and say, okay, here's who's coming to your like, it's really just an open, very practical, again, we're very practical, can-do people. Anne, me. So we're like, how can we help you? What are the action points? So that's what the mentorship is about. Yeah, we also teach a class, bizarrely the IFP asked us if we would teach a class, just a one-night seminar on something. And we had a lot of people come in and talk to us and take meetings with us, and some of them didn't really understand how to take a meeting, which is seems very obvious. But so we taught what became a very popular class in how to take a meeting, like a pitch meeting, or how to talk about your project and not come in and pitch and overwhelm, and just it's simply how to take a meeting. So our mentorship includes some super basic but important stuff that you need to know in the industry.
That's great. Great to hear. Rose, tell us a little bit about what's happening in your world. I understand you're directing a feature. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm directing a feature. Why I'm in my world, Jesus. In my world, I've been dealing with the dickheads on the front line for 20 years. That's my world. And I know we're not used to hearing women express anger, but I don't really care, because I have a lot of anger. And I have righteous anger, and I've earned that anger by being in this industry for 20 years, since I was basically a child. I was a teenager, and I have all of the statistics, everything you are, I have embodied. I have been the one girl in movies. I don't have peers because there's one girl allowed in the movie. I was the one girl. And I got tired of being allowed to be anything. Who's anybody to allow me or any other artist to be something? So I've taken the reins, I've taken the control to the best of my ability, but the other part of what I've been doing is just being very vocal, because I'm looking around, in society, and there are the statistics, or are all those things. I don't really care. These people don't, like, I am doing a movie potentially with somebody right now, not you, and they haven't even watched my movie. These men have not watched the movie I directed, and they're going to greenlight a film I'm doing.
I'm working with Tangerine is
Yes.
producing
Full disclosure.
one of Rose's features, and we watched and love her movie.
Thank you.
We do our homework.
It's very odd. It's very odd taking meetings in Los Angeles with people like, yes, let's do a film together. And I'm like, have you seen my movie? No. I could be doing like a YouTube video with cats or something. It's very strange. But the point is that if I can't get these people to watch a movie and they're going to hire me to make a movie for them, how are we going to get them to watch or read documents and statistics? And I don't care about people's good hearts anymore. I want action. I hear over and over in Hollywood now, we're becoming very aware of this problem. I don't care for your awareness. I can't take that to the bank. And neither can another artist, another female, another woman who has another story to tell. And we are not actually a minority. And we are audience members too. And I would say to people out there that are in this audience or in any audience, male or female, rise up and demand what you want, because we're being shortchanged too.
That's true. Like, I was going to say, like, also, that's so true. And as audience members, you also have to engage and help by, on opening weekend, see what films are directed by women and go see those films. Go see them first, and make a point about that. And that, making those changes and at least thinking about it and taking action is super, super important.
Well, I hear all of that passion and that energy and the anger, and I think that probably each one of us on this panel has those feelings. I mean, for me, I started in the business as a production coordinator, so I go organizational, that I put those feelings in a little manila file folder, and I say to myself, I can't dwell in that space. That's just one folder. I know where it is. I open it up. I have a lot of bitter pills in that file folder too. Hell no.
No, I'm happy. I'm happy to spread some.
Stories, right? We all have a lot of stories. We've all come up against these difficult moments, and so I hear you, and I feel all of that. I wonder, for our audience today, if we could talk a little bit about perception, misconceptions, and the realities of doing what we're doing in that space. So, because you appear to be energized right at this moment, Rose. Tell us a little bit about a misconception out there, let's say in the performance space,
A misconception of what?
Of what's available to women and what isn't, or what actually happens, and how many roles you're available for. You spoke about being the one woman role ensemble, let's say, but tell us, I mean, what common misconceptions are there out there about being a beautiful, talented actress, and the barriers to entry, let's say?
Well, the barriers to entry are simply that. I mean, they're barriers to entry. And I think a lot of it stems, honestly, if you go back to men consistently are being told to write what they know. And if what they write what they know is their universe, a lot of times that includes a one woman in their universe. Or I'm only going by empiric evidence of something that I've dealt with for 20 years, deep from within, not from the outside, as it's a very, like, misconceptions. I think there's not a lot of misconception. I think it's pretty clear what's going on. To me, like,
So
for
fewer roles, fewer opportunities.
I don't
The
want to.
opportunities are orchestrated by people who are not who the roles are for. I mean, I had a brunch. I was in LA about a couple of months ago, and a friend came to brunch with her husband, who will remain nameless, no fault of his own. But he's a very well-regarded Hollywood TV writer, and he's working on a TV show. I guess I shouldn't name the TV show, but it's a popular TV show about women, 50-something-year-old women. So I said, look, it's nice to meet you and all, but as I am the president of New York Women in Film and Television, I feel obliged to ask you, how many writers are there in the writers' room who are women? And he said, 3. And I said, okay, 3 of how many? 14. And I said, you're writing a show about female characters in their 50s, trials and tribulations. So it's a little snapshot, but I think
That's exactly, it elucidates it. On that side, there's usually the one woman in each kind of department on sets. There's the one woman. I mean, that should be its own, like, one woman TM, something like that. And 3 women TM. And hashtag boring.
Yeah, I mean, the point is also it's not just directors and writers and storytellers, but it's also in the crew. I mean, as bad as it is for directors, there are probably fewer women composers and cinematographers. So it's endemic in the whole industry, and women get put into certain roles. I mean,
So I don't know I don't know exactly. I don't think there are misconceptions that it's great out there. I don't think I need to clarify that. I think it's hard. It's hard in any industry. It's hard in this world. And I think for me, what I'm trying to shine a light on is, the micro of it all. If we can concentrate on this, film is America's #1 export. So what we put on this screen matters. And how they treat women behind the scenes is how they treat women on the screen, is how what people in society see women, is how people in society treat women. It's this whole cycle, and that's what I'm aiming to change and stop. I don't have any organized method. I don't have any people behind me. I don't have anything other than a voice. I don't know what to do other than say, I'm sick of it, enough already, I've had it. And I know a lot of other people that have, and it's okay to be that way. And it's okay to have times when there's a microphone in front of me that I talk like this. Am I like this all the time? No. If I felt like being like that, would that be okay too? Sure. But it's not. And what I'm going to do is not go through these people. I'm tired of being told I have to go through these people. I don't. I have to go around them. And that's what I would suggest to do for any woman or any man or anybody who feels like they're not being heard in the organization that they're in. Go around these people because the rules are ephemeral. They don't exist. Don't take them to heart. Don't think that you have to do what they say because it's not true.
yeah. Yeah.
I think that's a very good point, and I think that's a good segue because all of us are doing something that isn't really straightforward. We're all finding ways to go around or be creative about the system, each in our own ways. And Rachel, I would just turn to you and ask you if you have any fun facts for us. Do you have any empowering numbers that you can share with us that are not commonly known about, when Lydia was talking to me years ago about the toolkit, the thought was that there are these movies that are made, that are directed by women, that have grossed big numbers at the box office that I'm not even aware of. Who can name the top women directors? I'm sorry?
Pitch Perfect 2, Elizabeth Banks, probably the
Right, thank you.
top
Thank you. Yeah,
in the box office. Yeah.
So in the PGA Women's Action Women's Impact Network, in the toolkit, there are a lot of these facts that I think are good for us to know and arm ourselves with as we move on and try to do things a little bit differently. Do you have anything you would like to highlight, Rachel, on that?
Well, first I would say from a from a personal point of view, when I think about someone saying, oh, there's not enough of you, or there's not a big enough audience, and in the same breath, I'm referred to as a minority, I kind of chuckle to myself. I happen to be an African Asian woman, and I would say there's probably more people like me in the entire world than any other. So I'm absolutely not a minority if I look at my, overall. And so since my tribe is large, I would say that, I really think about it in terms of all of it, like marketing, distribution, awards, all those things that, often we're put in these silos and we, parse ourselves out. 10% of us are this, 5% of us are but if we actually galvanize and support one another in terms of content, which women do en masse, then we have much larger numbers. One of the main things is that women really apparently make up about 85% of household decisions. So that means which movies you go to, which videos, are you getting Netflix, are you getting HBO? All those things are, predominantly decided by women. And so our numbers, I look at, even when I came to this film festival, I look at the pictures and I say, which posters have women? And those are the films that I then focus in on. And I think that a lot of people do that, which films have people of color. I literally, it becomes that simple. And I'm sure that, if you're into sports, you look to see which ones are, have a baseball player, or whatever that is that's your thing. So I would say in terms of stats that are more, they're not shocking to me. I think that's part of it is that, in fact, a look at 100 highest grossing films of 2013, which is probably the most complete stats we have, revealed that on the whole, that movies with a female protagonist earn over 20% more on average than movies with a male protagonist. Go figure. Why aren't all movies made with women, mainly women? So literally like 116 million gross on average for female-led movies versus 97 million for male-led movies. So that in and of itself is counter to what we would think. And in 2014 and 15, pardon me, I'm just going to read from here a minute, there were continual breakthroughs of female-led characters, driving big budgets of over $100 million plus Hollywood films, with high worldwide box office returns like Hunger Games. Mockingjay Part 1 earned $752 million, Maleficent, $758 million. The Divergent series with Insurgent, $290 million. And then for mid-budget ranges like Cinderella, they were $538 million, Annie, $113 million. And Pitch Perfect 2, which we just heard, earned $273 million, and 50 Shades of Grey, $570 million. So, those films with even lower budgets also did well, like The Fault of Our Stars, $307 million, which is also Wild, $52 million, and If I Stay, $78 million. And really, one of the things that I thought was very interesting, Frozen, which was number 3, I think in the box from 2014, is the highest grossing animated movie and the 5th highest grossing movie of all time, with $1.219 billion. Now, I don't even know if that's enough, because all the merchandising that went into that movie. I know my niece has probably 7 Frozen dolls and horses, whatever the heck those things are. And so, but it's because we want these things. We want to see ourselves reflected. And I think the other thing wasn't just a regular princess movie. It's a princess movie where the kiss doesn't mean anything. And so it's not just that we have women characters. It's that the perspective is one that actually girls, women, female audiences can actually relate to, not a character who's there and her job is, oh, it's a great spy movie, and then we see her and she's given a blowjob. Like that, for me, is just, I want to turn this off or I'm going to leave the theater because it's so disrespectful. You have this great actress. I think some of us can probably remember one of those films. There's probably more than one, unfortunately. But it's looking at the content, not just, oh, does it have a woman? Is it, meeting certain markers? But really, is it authentic? Will it really resonate? And do you, as a studio person or the distributor, know how to market that? Because you may think it's great, but you may actually not be equipped to help market because you don't hang out in those places. You might have a misconception about what we're doing, what we talk about. You know, we just want to shop. Actually, we're plotting and planning most of the time that we're doing those things. So I think it's really having much more respect and having and taking advice from women who are involved in the everyday battle of trying to put forth better female-led content.
Leah, I would say, like to Rachel's point there about the content and the female protagonists, does it follow? And it doesn't have to, but the women directors you're working with in your group, what are they? What are the genres that they're covering, and what are they coming up against in trying to get those movies made?
I mean, I very much agree that I think audiences are hungry for films that accurately represent the diversity of the world around us. I see a lot of women in the audience nodding. I mean, we're tired of only seeing films from a male perspective. And I think women directors can tell all kinds of stories. But you do often see women writer-directors and those who've been shut out of the process for so long be more passionate and more driven to tell their own stories or to tell stories that have complex female characters. I think there's another study that showed that if you have a woman in producer or writer or director role, 30% of the crew is more likely to be female. There's more women on screen. It has a trickle-down effect. And I think, you know, there's active bias and there's passive bias. I think active bias is you have this idea of someone saying, I don't want to see women make films. I hope that there's not some old man in a room somewhere saying, I'm keeping women out, I'm going to lock the gates. But there's a lot of passive bias, which is thinking, oh, I'm open to whoever wants to make a film. Whoever comes through my door, I'll just pick the best one gets the job. It's a meritocracy. They don't realize that those gates are so narrow, and the people who are coming through their door or in their circle are a very select few. And so what organizations and movements like Film Fatales does is expand that room. It's pushing through those gates to say, there are a lot of talented women and a lot of talented female directors. If you're looking to create more content, you can find us all here. You know, we have a massive website with hundreds of women directors, and we almost act like an agency of people looking to make more films or film festivals. This festival, the Woodstock Film Festival, is an incredible supporter of women directors. This year, more than half the films in competition are directed by women, which is amazing. And you see that more and more. I mean, over just the past 2 years, Film Fatales works with film festivals. We reach out to programmers and we say, here's our database of all of our films which are on the festival circuit right now. If you're looking to program more films by women, here they all are. And you're seeing massive improvements in the independent sphere. And I think what's next is to see that in Hollywood. And you know, the ACLU is right now pushing for a class action lawsuit against the studios, and they're just now reaching out to directors to start to hear their stories, and hopefully in our lifetimes, we'll start to see more than 5% of films made by women.
Amy, tell us about in the day-to-day, in pushing Tangerine's mandate, what you come up against, and in terms of I love how that was illustrated there, the active bias versus the passive bias.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'll say is we don't really have a content mandate, so our only mandate is it's a woman director. We work, it can be a male writer, male protagonist, it can be a panda kung fu movie. We don't, the only thing is we feel if more women are telling stories, it will fall from there. So like Leah is saying, by that order of business, we have found that we have more women crew people, and we do have more stronger, women protagonists. It just seems to happen that way. Having said that, we also will be in a meeting, or just in any case say, "Oh, could you make that character a man?" Like we're interested in that, but that's not purely our mandate. In the day-to-day, look, we as Rose said, we're working about creating our own systems and going around for the most part. We do pitch in Hollywood. We do have what everyone's experiences might be like. We go to meetings. I've been in meetings with a male producing partner where I ask a question, they turn an answer to the guy. I mean, we kind of brush it off. We have a sense of humor, and we're like I said, we're looking for women financiers. We're looking for other ways to get these films made, and we'll continue pushing in Hollywood. We go to meet with agents. We go to meet with. We had a great meeting with James Shamus before he left Focus, and he loves what we're doing, and we said, so how many women directors are on the list for this film or that film? And he's like, you're right. So I think the more we talk about it in those meetings and bring it up, it will become. We're chipping away, but at the same time, we're getting shit done outside the system.
I think we have to talk a little bit about the focus maybe for our inner circles has been on women directors. There aren't enough women directors. We know that that's true, but we also, each of us has sort of touched on the fact that there aren't enough women represented in the crafts, behind the camera, in roles, in ensemble casts and whatever. And I have this, I don't know, I have been thinking a lot about this kind of a more systematic approach. And I wonder what your thoughts are about how we could cultivate more women as powerful decision makers. Where do women get sort of the inspiration to be a talent agent, to be an entertainment attorney, to be a CPA for entertainment, to be a studio head? I think that certainly we have to promote the artists within our community as writers, as directors, as actors. But I think if you zoom out and you take a look at the system that we're constantly bucking up against or even circumventing as creatively as we can, I think we need to cultivate all of those roles. And I just wonder if anybody has any thoughts about how we could do that or what they think about that.
As far as how they could do that, I'm not entirely sure. I've worked, I've spent over 57,000 hours on sets, I've calculated. And in that, it's been working for groups of men and large groups of men and people who make a lot of money off of what I do and other people around them on the crew, being in service to them. So that's behind. But in front, I have dealt with a lot, there are a lot of female producers. That seems to be the one area where it's okay and allowed to be, that. But a lot of the studio executives that I do know, that are not that many, but the ones that I do know that are women, I think it's about taking the ones that are and reaching out to them possibly and getting them to see that they don't have to play by the boys club rules, because what I've dealt with a lot in Hollywood is an imitation of a man, basically. Yeah. And that's mind-numbing and also really sad, really, really quite sad, because it's nothing against men, but I know men that say, like, when I hire a woman, I want what her strengths are. I don't want my strengths. I've got that. So there are different things, and there's this real pervasive feeling in Hollywood and unwritten rule that is you have to act like that guy. And that guy can do some damage. And these people, and a lot of times women, are just as culpable at being part of that damage that happens. Mm-hmm. So I would say reaching out to them maybe through New York Women in Film and talking to those women, finding the women that are in power now, getting them to mentor other women, getting them to put women on the list for directors, but not just that, but getting them to see a set as a totality. Again, what's going on behind the screen is reflected on the screen, is reflected to society. So one of the ways I think would be engendering empathy, not just empathy, but action. And one of the ways they can do that is if they go to USC and talk to people in film school at night, find the ones that also, like, some people maybe shouldn't even necessarily be on the creative side. Maybe they should be on that side, but I think you can bring creativity to any job in any side of the world that you're in. I think it's really about changing the institutionalized attitude towards creatives that comes from the side of the studio executives, this, that, because they're trained to have no empathy. And they're trained from very early, like the agents, believe me, you go to an agency, and I've been represented by them and dealt with them for years, women and men alike. These are not, by and large, warm and fuzzy people. Shocking, but true. So maybe also shifting, you know, I think what really needs to be offered to everybody is a quick chiropractic adjustment for the mind. And go in fast, go in hard, take their head, and plant another thought and get the fuck out. But make sure they do something. That's my plan.
I totally agree with all of that. One thing I might add is, so we have a very strong mentorship program at Tangerine. So particularly in the summer, we bring on interns who get school credit, and you know, 90% of them are women, and we have this. We really help these women just like step up to the plate and work hard. And we were in our office one day, and this weird guy walked in and walked up to Anne and said, "What are you guys doing here?" And we're so like, "Well, we make movies." And he's like, "Well, I make movies." And then I said, I wanted to get the guy out of there. I was like, we only work with women. And he's like, "What are you, feminists?" And then walked out. And then all three, it was all three women interns that day. We're all like, "Feminists, yeah, we're feminists." Like, so it's just like engendering that, empowering these young women that are coming up and coming out of school and education, and just it's like a new, like, it's cool to be a feminist. It's not like,
The bad word didn't infect the, it didn't, the slander of the word itself and what it is hasn't quite infected it.
It hasn't infected the 18-year-olds yet.
The F word.
Yeah, the
Yes.
F word.
I love the F word.
Yeah, me too.
All of them.
I agree. I think the answer really is mentorship and visibility as well, in terms of finding equality in these other positions. I know for myself, I became a director when I became aware of the work of people like Jen Campion and Lynn Ramsey and some of the women directors who'd come before me. And before that, I never thought I could be a director. You picture a director, you picture this certain type of usually white, nerdy man, the Spielbergs, the Tarantinos, and just having that visibility. Now younger women see Ava DuVernay and think, I can do this too. And the model of Film Fatales, of female directors getting together and mentoring each other and supporting each other, is one that is replicable for any other position. Just yesterday, we inspired a group of women editors to get together and start a sister group. We have a producers group now. Reed Morano, we're starting a cinematographers group. And the idea is, if younger generations see it as an option in film to become other roles, that hopefully, by mentoring each other, eventually we'll all get to positions of power. We can reach back and help the next one up. It's a bottom-up approach.
And I would say this has been going on a long time. I mean, definitely, Mira Nair came my freshman year to talk to us after she'd made Salam Bombay, and I thought, I'm not going to do sociology and sculpture. I'm going to become a filmmaker. And, my first bosses were Paula Weinstein and Mark Rosenberg, who were very adamant about women's content. And they just produced A Dry White Season directed by Usan Palsi, which was the first Hollywood film directed by a black woman director. And that, was in my, after I graduated. So there's no example of that prior to. And now I'm working with Julie Dash on a film. And she's another one of those firsts. And I think we can still look at the firsts and say, they've only made still a handful of films. So what is that about? And there is actually, I think there has to be an expectation of pushback. It's cyclical, these things happen in. I mean, when I came up, Hollywood Women's Political Committee that's what Paula was in. And so we are very impactful, basically elected Bill Clinton. It was Marilyn Bergman, Barbara Streisand, Paula Weinstein, and many other incredibly powerful women, agents like Bodie Boatwright, and people who were often the only ones in the room. But that comes from a continuum. Paula's godmother was Lillian Hellman. I mean, this is not something that happens in a vacuum. These things get passed down from generation to generation. And we as the kids in that production company were taken to pro-choice marches in DC, you know, and I think that this kind of idea of activism as part of art, that was part of your responsibility to mentor others that came after you, is just something that's been instilled. And that was at Warner Brothers. If you think about, you know, that was within the studio system. So I think that all of us have had mentors who, men and women, that have seen us. That's really all it takes, someone to see your talent, see your potential, and want that to blossom. And I think that we can do that on many, many levels. And the PGA Women's Impact Network does also have a lot of salons with you know, people like Laurie McCreary or Barbara Hall from Madam Secretary to talk about how do you get a show made? How did we do it? You know, what are some of our advantages? Demystifying the process. How do you get an agent? What are some of the things to start a company? What things are available for you as women? I mean, it's really basic. It can be introductions, or it can be literally take this workshop. And I think that we owe it to one another, because I don't think there's anyone who hasn't been mentored by someone. And that's the only way that things get pushed forward.
I think that there's a lot of work to be done,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of work has been done, and I think that you bring up a good point, Rachel, that we have to look at the women who came before us and the cycle of those women in power in the 70s, and take a look at what's really happening, you know, in front of us. Look at us, look at what we're doing on the board, look at on this panel, look at what NIWIFT is doing in PGA and companies like Tangerine and Locomotive, and I'm thinking about how many Writers Guild deals I just signed with women writers, just because that's what we want to do. It's not, you know, a pointed choice. It's we want to make movies that we want to make, and these are the people we want to work with. And so there's the conversation, there's the national arena, there's the ACLU, there's all of these studies. You know, it's all sort of bubbling around us, and I think we need to keep talking about it and keep doing what we're doing. And I thank you all for being here and doing what you're doing, and I think this would be a good time to look to our audience to see if they have any questions for our panel. And I don't know, do I lead that, or does our tech director? Oh, I guess woman over here, I thought she had a question.
This woman, she's back there.
This woman
Oh,
on the
no,
corner.
this one back here. Do you see her? All the way back there?
This was the one that caught my eye.
sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Who am I giving up the mic to?
Woman right here, the second row, all the way in the far
I'm starting to make it up.
left.
You guys are magnificent. Thank you. This may be tangential, but I'm a civil rights lawyer. And recently, as we all know, we've had huge victories for marriage equality. And most careful observers think that a big piece of that has been the increase since '98 in the sympathetic depiction of LGBT people. I've been looking, I'm a reproductive freedom advocate, and loved your comment about going to choice demonstrations. But if you look at depictions of women having unintended pregnancies on all the mainstream media, it almost never happened. In fact, 40% of women experience unintended pregnancies, and half of them end in abortion. In the media, women never get pregnant, and if they do, they decide to keep the kid, or they get murdered, or something like that, so you don't have to deal with it. And I'm trying to understand both how the LGBT presence in the media changed so much since '98, and how we can move the dial on depicting not just women, but women dealing with unintended pregnancies, because that's millions of stories, and they're complex and interesting.
Anybody want to take that?
I've portrayed as a pregnant person on film before. I totally hear what you're saying. I think my empiric evidence behind that is because it's a lot of powerful white gay males behind the scenes in Hollywood.
I also think
The analogy to that is because correct, but the analogy is that's the analogy, sorry, I should finish that, is there are, and also, and the women that, and everybody behind the scenes, as we're so in the arts, very integrated with LGBT community, but it's one of those, it's not done. As somebody who's been on screen playing a pregnant woman, and also, we also are not allowed to go to the bathroom on screen. There's a lot of things that we don't do. This is very important, and it is something I'll file away for my next films, and thank you for pointing that out. And I think what you do is tremendous. I think a lot of that is why that has changed in the LGBT communities, because that has been a focus, and this now needs to become a focus as well.
I concur. There was a film recently called Obvious Child, which made a big point about that, and that's why it raised a lot of, attention. I think Planned Parenthood, I don't know if there's anyone here from here, has someone that's been working with filmmakers to portray and guide and portray and help these sorts of portrayal on screen. I think there's an active movement to do that.
Gillian,
know?
who directed Obvious Child, is part of Film Fatales in New York,
Yeah.
and so is Diana Whitten, who made a documentary called Vessel you might be interested in.
Yeah,
But the answer is just more women telling stories.
yeah.
That'll naturally happen, hopefully.
Hi, I'm Asanda. My name's Thelma Adams, and we've
Hi,
been doing
Thelma.
this panel. I just want to kind of put it into context. We've been doing women's panels here for 12, 13 years, so we're a pretty educated bunch, yeah? And what I'm curious about, because what I loved about your title was Enough Already. And what the stats are there, we're all being really nice and not getting angry and kind of going, okay, what are some, I know,
Yeah.
what are some radical things we can do? That's why if I
Rose.
were you, I'd be cutting me off. But I have one idea, and then Rose,
Please.
because I've
No.
one idea that's radical, which is Academy Awards, women have power. You go to the Academy Awards, it's all about women in dresses for 3 hours before. The money. We all watch now the 3 hours before. What if women said, we're going in jeans and a pink t-shirt that says women right on? Okay? What are some things, we all know that the details, the statistics are staggering. Women are getting together. We're talking. There's this change that's happening. But let's...
It's not happening fast enough. I'm here to kick the fucking door down. is what
Okay.
I'm doing.
So let's
You're
talk
right,
about
Thelma.
that.
You're right, Thelma.
I think it's great for somebody to feel radical. I'm listening to you, and I've been around a while, and I'm not so radical, but I'm consistent, but I'm working, but I'm up against it, but I do it, and I think radical's great if you feel radical. If you don't feel radical and you feel maybe more subversive, it's not so subversive, but I work really hard doing what I do. I spend time mentoring a lot of people. I look up, I look at the people behind me, I look at the people in front of me. I mean, I'm working it all the time. So that's my way of handling it. Maybe Rose and maybe some of the other panelists have a different way of being rad. But, I think it's hard to be rad and to keep working. And that's not a cop-out.
That wasn't.
I know that's totally not a cop-out. What I'm saying is, bullet points, let's have some bullet points of some radical things that we can do.
Demand that the Academy have more women voters. Who are the people who vote for the Academy Awards? Who knows that fact? Terry?
It's,
You know
it's,
that? So could you say it again, please? 64% of the Academy voters.
right. I think the radical thing and what she wants, or what we can do, these are all these side of it, and that's great, but what are ways that we can be more punk about this?
Right.
And maybe we can put together, maybe I'll do it, I don't know, a collective of people that are like, the queer rights advocates had radical activists. Why not on this side of it too? Why do we always have to be somewhat deferential and subdued and thank God for you. First of all. First of all, no, seriously, no. Thank God for all of what. No, I understand. My part of it, and my part of it is doing it, is just pushing hard, because I've been on the other side. I've not only been part of the problem in some ways, but also a victim in a lot of ways, and that's not going to happen anymore on my watch. So what I'm doing is I want to start, this year, my mission is to start a collective. One of the things I'm working towards is pushing back and pushing back hard. And if there are queer rights activists, which I was always a long-time LGBT rights activist, I can take things out of that playbook and transfer it to this. I think one of the things we do is we get a lot more visible, a lot louder, a lot meaner, and a lot harder, and a lot faster. And it's the only way we're gonna get around this stuff, because they're not playing nice in the reverse. Trust me, I know them, I work for them.
I would say in terms of being radical, I think it's more about being smart and actually looking at all of the ways that your film gets out there, or your television show, or your any kind of media. You have to be media savvy, for one. I think a lot of people are not. I think a lot of filmmakers are not. You have to, if you're getting ready for war, you better get ready. You know, I come from an organizing background, so that meant going door to door and selling an unappealing idea initially that then you realize, oh, this is in my interest, and you start to galvanize other people. And a lot of it is about organizing. And literally, I, as a PGA member, I'm also a member of several other organizations. I'm a member of an Asian women producers group that we meet downtown in Chinatown for dim sum. I'm a member, the Film Fatales one was, I think I was the youngest woman at 48, and most of the people were European. So, it was like mostly women over 60 at the time, and now we're actually becoming more intergenerational, which I think is helpful, and resources. I'm part of an African women's group and another co-production. But part of it is get everybody together. So we started, we've been talking amongst ourselves, all of the different leaders, in terms of sharing resources and how do we let one another know? How do we let Melissa Silverstein at Women in Hollywood know, or somebody else who's sympathetic, all the bloggers we know? So I think some of it is really about using some of the resources that are already there, but figuring out mining those and figuring who's on our side. Because there's a lot of people who are, in fact, the silent majority that want to see this, but are not necessarily gonna stick their heads out. And so we have to be willing to go on the front lines to do that. And I don't think it's always about being angry. I spent years running an all-male hip-hop music video company. 10 male directors, and talk about herding cats. Okay, so it's really, no one's more badly behaved than grown men with access to beautiful women. And, so it's not, I think that we often can run circles around people because we are actually focused, but we just have to focus on ourselves. And often we're enabling others in their careers, in various ways, psychologically, supporting them financially, facilitating in all these ways. And we have to give that back to one another and really say that we're worth investing in. And so that, for me, is the radical thought, is to look and pay attention to all of these outlets, whether it's distribution, exhibitions, awards. If you want to vote, you have to be a member. So if you want to vote for the DGA and you're complaining about it, you gotta strive toward becoming a DGA member or SAG or Writers Guild, because those numbers do count, and you have to both be outside and inside working toward that goal.
But to the rad comment, there, it would be interesting to hear what other things people think they could do. Would you say, okay, I don't want to name any names, but big law firm, I will not enlist your services unless you have an equal number of women's names in your partnership roster. I will not make a studio deal because you have no women executives at your studio. These are radical things that you could do. You could just keep saying no, keep saying no. So, are people prepared to do that?
Yes.
No, seriously. Yeah.
NIWIFT, Upwift. I think I'm too loud already. But I stopped asking for permission and just started creating content. And what I didn't have was access. I made a movie with 2 movie stars. It took me 3 years to get a European distributor who got me on Showtime for 2 years. But I backdoored it in and I did it all myself. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to play, but I'm never invited to the party. When I'm writing in Hollywood, I'm perpetuating the stereotype. Women of color, I'm in that sub-file drawer, and now I'm over 40, so I'm not there at all. You were filling 3 EEOC spots, woman, woman of color, woman over 40. So when they're looking for you, they have to be looking for a woman writer over 40 who's of color, who can write those people. What does that mean, those people? My first job was for John Singleton. I'm writing about women of color taking back the projects in St. Louis. And I had to go to him and say, John, I was raised in a girls' finishing school. I don't know anything about the projects. He goes, I know, I don't care. But the point was that he just wanted a woman of color as the face out there because nobody else was using us. But that radicalized information only went so far as his career. Once he's tanked, we had no power anymore. So I worked for Jodie Foster. She thought you could get, with her deal with Egg Pictures, everything. She could greenlight everything. When she found out she couldn't greenlight, she was pissed. And I don't blame her. She spent her whole career showing that she was a viable entity, and why shouldn't she say, this picture is ready to go? But if she has no power, what do we have collectively but each other? And that's my message. We have to work with each other, and we have to create content, and we have to just keep creating content. Stop asking people for permission.
Yeah, I'd say that I know earlier someone said that the numbers are probably worse for cinematographers. They are definitely worse than cinematographers, and I was very excited to hear that Film Fatale is going to address that, because I believe that they talk about passive and active. Active prejudice is very much felt by female cinematographers, because they're the ones who get the long speeches about emotional lady brains can't operate a camera. And I truly believe until people see that women can function on the technical side, women will be never seen as equal filmmakers. And I think women cinematographers are like a key issue for respected women, and it's not just crew stuff. I mean, I think women cinematographers are heroes. I think from Brim, I can't remember, but I remember there's I blanking her name, but she was a TV cinematographer, first woman to be in the American Cinematographers, and she tried to join a local chapter, and a union official said, my wife doesn't even drive a car, you'll never operate a camera. You'll get in this union when I'm like over my dead body. And then she got in the union, and they asked, how did you do that? And he's like, he died. And I think there's 5 women in the American Cinematographers, work now. So I just wanted to throw that out. I'm very happy. The more you can address women cinematographers, the better, because that kind of lack of respect for women on the technical end is, other than editors, is atrocious, quite honestly.
I started out in the camera department myself, so I know all about it.
I think there's also a societal layer to that too. I think it's it's an artistic endeavor being a cinematographer, and I think if we looked at our women differently, and if we looked at our artists differently, we would have a better opportunity to exalt the idea of a woman cinematographer, because the European cinematographers who I know who are women, they come from a little bit of a different culture, so that requires a cultural shift on our part as well. But thanks for saying it, because I should underscore cinematography as well. Without it, we'd be nowhere. We'd be seeing nothing. I think this woman in the first row. Oh, I'm sorry. That's okay.
I'll be quick. I just have one thing to say. I'm a Film Fatale and very proud to be here. Very happy to have you all here. But I endorse what you say. We have to take control and create product, create properties that we can go out and sell. I was very inspired when I first saw Leah speak. She said, just do it yourself. Just don't wait for permission, do it yourself, which is so amazing. But the other bullet point I will say, the call to action, is help each other. Women have to help other women.
Hi.
First, I had a quick question. Some of the numbers, the more positive numbers, Rachel, that you were giving, those are on the toolkit?
Yes.
We can just find them, they're there.
Yeah,
That's
everything
awesome.
is available. You can download it, share it widely. This is not one of those proprietary things. We want everyone to make use of this stats.
That's
Yeah.
great. Well, and just in terms of being radical, I know when I saw that Cinderella was going to be directed by a man, I was so angry. I thought, Cinderella? Like, we can't even get a female director for Cinderella, really. And, I thought to myself, what would happen if some of these mommy groups and the mommy blogs and all those got together and created a petition and sent it to Disney and said, hey, guess what? We're not going to come to your movie. We're not going to buy, right? Well, of course, I want to work for Disney someday, right, as a director, which is part of the problem, right? That's part of the problem. But, so I think, though, the idea of, when I tell my friends who are not in the film industry, some of these statistics, 7% of the big Hollywood films directed by women, that sort of thing, they are floored. They are shocked. They cannot believe these numbers. We all know these numbers in here, but women in general across America do not know these numbers. And I think if they did, and they started to really understand what Rose was talking about how it reflects in the society, like our media really creates our society, and then our society creates our media, and that's the loop. And if more women really got that, I think that would make a difference. They would start demanding, the consumers would start demanding from the big companies, and then, so that's my little suggestion. Thanks.
So do we need more PSAs, or what? No, wait. Yeah. By the way, I like the idea of the boycott, because that actually has worked. I know NALIP, which is the National Association of Latino Independent Producers, when PBS was going to put up Latinos in America, then they found out there was no Latino director. It was actually it was a British director, not even an American director. They politely objected, many different ways behind the scenes, and then eventually they took it public. And they got a co-director. There were two directors. They had already, I guess, signed the gentleman on. And no disrespect to his own work, but it was sort of like, how can you know anything about the nuances and ask those questions if you don't know anything about the culture, really, other than what you're reading in books and someone's telling you? And so they were able to make those changes. And I think that's, there's room for all of those. And I sign on and help with the Cinderella protest, absolutely.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah. Hi, Lori Ponder, a NIWIFT, UPWIFT dual member and writer-director. As to the earlier comment about being radical and what can we do, for example, about the fashion runway pre-show events, there is the Ask Her More campaign, hashtag Ask Her More. One thing we all can do is anytime there's any award show on television, whether related to film, stage, or television, is get on the Twitters and hashtag the Ask Her More, because there are a lot of female actors who are involved in this. They actually protested and boycotted the Manny Cam. I don't know if you're all aware of that E! Television had going on. And I believe that E! Stopped doing it because so many female actors said, I'm sorry, I have no interest in doing that. And they made a very clear point of it. So do jump on the Twitters, hashtag Ask Her More, which is to ask an actor more than what is she wearing, who designed her dress, and who hung a jewelry chain around her neck. So one other thing, my personal issue with being radical is getting more female financiers to invest in film. I have heard over and over and over again, I've almost collected hundreds of quotes from male financiers and producers who say, they're not embarrassed, it's not a confession, it's simply a fact of life. They say, I only invest and or work on movies or films that interest me personally. If I'm going to sign up and work on a project for however many months or years, then it's really got to be something that speaks to me personally, which is why we see all these movies about two guys going out and trying to get laid. So Deborah Kampmeyer is a filmmaker I met at Sundance, whose feature film Hound Dog with Dakota Fanning, very controversial, of course, but she did give a pep talk to a now defunct group in the city called Cinewomen. And so many of the people in the group were asking, how did you get your movie made? And how did you get financing? And how did you, she said, and excuse my French, she said, if you want to make your movie, make your fucking movie yourself. Don't wait for anyone. And interestingly, I met her financiers who were female. I don't know how she found them actually, but until Mattel comes out with film financer Barbie, I don't know that we're going to see a lot of mega female millionaires who are willing to sign up for it. Yeah. Well, and just one quick thing. Yes. I believe that the answer is women helping other women and crowdsourcing each other's films and taking initiative to go out and look for female-initiated projects, because maybe we can't get one or two people to sign up for a few $1 million, but collectively, how can we get out the word to collectively help each other fund each other's projects? And thank you.
Are there any questions? Yes. There's a woman right here in the front row who has a question.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Thank you for all the information that you've put out there. I'm an author and also a writer, and the thing that I've come across is that many times I've gone to agents and different people trying to show them my work. I've sold many things on my own. I've done things that most people, look at me and say, how did you do this? But when I go to an agent or I try to get someone interested in my work, the first thing they say is, oh, you're a woman and you know what to do, and also you've done so many things and just keep doing them, but we're not going to do anything for you and we're not going to help you. How do you get somebody to kind of knock the door down to people who have no experience or people who are just getting into the industry in a different kind of way to get your work out there? And people listen.
Anybody want to take that on?
I think that's that's a real universal female in society thing. I don't know specifically how to answer that, because each woman, I think, here has, I'm sure, dealt with these things in their own way. And I imagine just taking their faces and smashing them into the ground sometimes helps. But overall, it's about being really blunt sometimes. And even if these people aren't going to do it for you, you can implant an idea into them that means they're going to do it for the next woman that walks in. There's a way to, there are ways to do this. What I say, even as far as related to film, when I go into any meeting with any men, or which is usually the meetings, and these are constants, I say, do me a favor when I leave. If you hear someone say something about women in a derogatory fashion, just like you would if you heard somebody say a racial slur or something against an LGBT community member, something like that, adjust them, stop them. If you hear somebody say things like, oh, you've been doing it, just say, I would say straight up to these people, because what do you have to lose at that point? I would say this is a complete cop-out, and this is why. And they're not going to sign you. They told you that to their face. So go back hard at them a little bit, and then maybe the next person that walks through, if you pop open their brain, will have a little more success. That's also a way of paying it forward, I find.
Well, I think we have time for one more.
I'd like to ask, you said you were a lawyer. Maybe are there other lawyers in the room? I'm very curious about a possible pressure point, which is that every movie has to get a permit from the mayor's office or the state, and every movie is actually subsidized by the public of the state or the city. Mm-hmm. So how is it that discrimination can be allowed to persist when it's being financed by our local governments and local states?
It's a very, very good point.
And this is where, I think the mayor's office of New York is a ripe plum for a pressure point. I think every state film commission is a ripe plum. These are people who have to answer to citizens. And even the federal government subsidizes exporting of our great, intellectual property. There should be pressure points there.
That's the last not question.
Time for one more? We have time for one more question. There's someone in the back there, all the way back?
Well, I wanted to just address that. I'd love to talk to you afterward about some of those things. And we obviously Producers Guild's a member of NYPA. There's lots of organizations that are. And so what are those, ways we can galvanize together? So I think that's a more offline discussion.
My name is Kim Blacklock. I'm president of HG Fairfield Arts. I'm also an actor, producer, director. I'm a member of NYWIFT, member of SAG, and I like the idea about the boycotts. I like the idea about the pressure points. And I wanted to talk about women of color in the films in terms of the indigenous populations. My family are the High Chiefs of Samoa. The first Samoan woman to be published, written, was 1996. And yet Disney's popping out with their first Polynesian princess. Well, guess what? Polynesian princesses look like me, only darker. And yet, what's the Polynesian princess we're going to be looking at? So I like the idea of the boycott. It has worked historically for many social action things. And I like the pressure points. And take a look at, obviously, how we're representing women of color, who are the invisible women of color, and how can we help support, because there's already a cooperation and then there's already an embedded art network that happens in our cultures because we don't separate. So I think we have a lot that we can help each other with. Thank you.
I'd love to actually address that briefly, which is, there are organizations that do specifically focus on women of color, but it's always an interesting thing when you say diverse. People think, are you only doing, do you only want Black, Latino, and Asian women? Do you want, no, we want everyone. And that is exactly, but part of it is that unless, I think the women's movement has historically been white women, right? And so there is actually a tie between, in terms of women who are better off historically, economically, that privilege rests often, and particularly in this country, on the oppression of women of color, or someone who's doing the service that you cannot do in order for anyone to move forward. And I think that there has to be an understanding that if your public face is, if you say, oh, we're out for women, and you show only white women, what you are passively saying is, this is not for women of color. And whether or not you actually mean that, it is the takeaway. The same as if you look at a panel and it's all white men, as a woman, or all men of any color, you feel, oh, they're saying we don't count, or we don't have a voice there. And so I think that, public branding of anything is important, but to acknowledge that maybe that isn't on your radar. Maybe you don't know enough people to offer. And so there are a lot of times that any of us are asked, hey, do you know any women crew? Do you have any people of color you can recommend for this? Or, and I think, honestly, with the Native community, people don't, they're so far removed because it's so deeply rooted, whether it's Native Americans or Polynesians or any Native community. There's so much guilt wrapped up that people don't want to address, historical guilt that may not be your own, that you don't want to address because it's like if you go to the slave castles, usually people leave halfway through because it's too serious. But it's not us individually who have to take on those guilts. What we need to say is, that's a wrong worth righting. And, here's my role that I can play, whatever small or large. It's not about placing blame. It's how do we make impact by seeing and hearing each other's stories, because I'm sure there's Polynesian stories that would resonate on so many levels, in terms of humanity. And I think that's the thing we have to be looking at, is how do we, really in these stories about any group, or find ourselves. And I think there's lots of ways to do it. So, there's lots of organizations that foster this, but I do think that there is something about not being the one in the room, the one of any kind, that is helpful. And, sometimes those are important forums to have, just as, this one here, of all this, like preaching to the converted, but also sometimes who says, oh, your voice matters. Like that's not something that everybody's heard before, but can get to the nuances of it, and we need those kind of safe havens for discussion as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Announcements to make. One is that if you're not already a NIWIFT or an UPWIFT member, we're offering a special discount today of $100 off the initiation. And there is a beautiful little goldenrod sheet here and at our reception. We'd like to invite you all to join us down the street and across the street at the Photography Center for a reception where we can continue the conversation and have a little wine and cheese. Thank you all for coming.